Welcome. I'm Greg Mathias, Associate Director of the Center for Great Commission Studies. I'm joined with my friend and colleague, Scott Hildreth, who is the Director of our Center for Great Commission Studies. We're so glad you joined us for our Missions Emphasis Day. What we're doing throughout the day today, we're highlighting some of our former and current students who are living and serving all around the world. And so watch for those videos throughout the day. But right now, we're joined with Caleb. Caleb, we're so glad you've joined us on this video, and tell us a little bit more about who you are and where you're living.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's obviously a pleasure to participate in this, and especially with my love for all things Southeastern. This is an honor. So my name is Caleb, and I have the opportunity of serving with the International Mission Board in Eastern Europe in the country of Bulgaria, which is nestled right between the more infamous countries of Turkey and Romania and Greece. And we arrived here back in 2015 as a part of the 2+ program. My wife, Sarah, and at that point in time, I had a 1.5-year-old little girl. Since then, we've added 2 more. So we have 3 kids, Hannah, 6, Ben, 3, and Eliza is about a 1.5-year-old little girl. And so we started out in the capital city of Sofia, primarily focusing on language and culture development, and as often as we could to invest time in discipleship, working with our primary partner, the Bulgarian Baptist Union. Our focus was on planning additional churches in Bulgaria and developing national leaders to that effort as well. About 1.5 years ago, after a 6-month stop, we returned to Bulgaria and relocated to the central part of the country into a much smaller area in a city named Gabrovo, which has roughly 60 or 70,000 people. Basically, this was just a dark spot in the country. There was basically no Bible teaching church in the region that we were aware of. And we said, that's where we want to go and try to invest some time and invest our lives to try to essentially start a church that's going to be a light for that region. So once again, we focus on church planning, discipleship, and sharing the gospel as often as we can.
Great, Caleb. Thanks so much for telling us about that. And so your new family, new location, and you end up there, and now you're in a new, unprecedented season in the globe with the COVID-19 global pandemic. How has this coronavirus pandemic impacted Bulgaria, your community, your family? Talk to us a minute about that.
Sure. This is one of those interesting things because obviously, as everyone knows, the virus has not just touched one region of the world, but has really impacted every single continent and locale. And it definitely has had its impact on our family and our lives in general, but also our ministry more specifically here in Eastern Europe. We were actually down in Athens. I was undergoing a medical procedure when basically the first cases were discovered in Bulgaria, and they ironically happened to be right in our small little town. And at that point in time, we were just very concerned about getting back in before the government issued any states of emergency or quarantines. And so we made it back in on the day that the country issued a state of emergency. And we weren't quite sure what to expect. Obviously, this is unprecedented for all of us. We weren't quite sure how long it was going to last. And so we just decided, okay, let's push through this. Let's be patient and see what happens as everything is developing. And let's try to stay as healthy as possible while continuing to share and have an impact on the people. Very early on, they basically limited us to our apartment, which a relatively small apartment with 3 kids and a dog. That room gets small pretty quickly. And thank goodness that we had the internet. We were still able to interact with local believers and some of those that we were discipling. We were only allowed to leave the home if we were going to the supermarket or walking the dog. Soon after that, I would say one of the more interesting measures that they took was that they basically quarantined everyone to their existing city. So we were not allowed to leave our city. They had police stationed at every exit, and unless there was exigent circumstances, you had to stay. And that's a little unnerving when medical care in your local town isn't very good and you have 3 small kids. And but the Lord has been gracious. And so just every aspect of life has really been touched. My daughter's school was canceled. And so that was sort of a pool of ministry and contacts that we lost. A lot of the things that we were doing out in the community, getting involved with the library, doing English classes and things like this, all of those things immediately ceased. And so we were kind of left saying, okay, we have a job to do. We have a task. People need to hear the gospel. People need to be discipled. How are we going to continue to engage them? And of course, we turned to technology, which is what most of the world is doing. And we were discipling and sharing the gospel through our windows when neighbors passed by. We're interacting with people through Zoom and Facebook. We were able to produce a number of video resources, especially around the Easter holiday, explaining the different characters, and we were able to share the gospel that way. And so once again, very much like the church in the U.S., we just had to adapt most of our communication means, because so much of our ministry was previously based on face-to-face communication, and obviously that was curtailed.
Yeah, so that requires just a lot of flexibility and creativity. But now that we're kind of further along in this pandemic, I think some of the restrictions have maybe lifted just a little bit, even in your part of the world. And so what does ministry look like now, kind of responding to this new environment that you find yourselves in?
Absolutely. Once again, there's still some trepidation amongst the general population. We've actually entered somewhat of a second wave here in Bulgaria. I don't think it's going to get too bad, but it is still calling for some level of concern. And so the churches have opened back up where previously they had been shut down. People are still trying to decide whether they like the online Bible studies. Some pastors say yes, some say no. Which I know is the ongoing debate in the U.S. We have primarily turned to trying to do discipleship any way possible. My wife has been discipling a young believer just over the telephone or over a Facebook chat. I'm actually right now investing in a Bulgarian believer that has relocated to Germany and is working amongst Muslim background coworkers. And so I'm able to invest in him, obviously digitally, despite the distance. We have gotten involved with a small local church here in our area that was previously unknown to us. And we are just beginning now to be able to go as a family and invest in the folks there. I had the opportunity to preach for the first time a couple weeks ago. And so we're hoping to slowly but surely unveil some training, whether it be evangelism training or some basic hermeneutical type training. So once again, the ministry has fundamentally changed during this season. At first we thought, this will just last a month or two, but we've had to settle into the new normal, so to speak. And but it's been good. It's forced us to think outside of our traditional ministry boxes. We've had to maintain communication. We haven't been able to just say, well, I'll just wait for this thing and ride it out. We've had to continue to meet with people as best we can, and to continue to share the gospel. It has been a challenge, but we're continuing to do that primarily through the internet. And Bulgarians love being outside, and so we're able to spend ample time in the parks without masks, thankfully. Without the fear of the police showing up and breaking up our group. So we're able to meet in parks and share the gospel that way. And we've actually seen a significant uptick in the amount of gospel shares that we've been able to make even this year because of the sort of the urgency and the atmosphere.
And that's great, Caleb. Thanks so much for talking to us about that. That's so encouraging to hear how you guys have responded, and even the openness of the people who are there with you. And so we want to thank you for tuning in and watching this interview we've had with Caleb in Bulgaria. We appreciate you taking time today just to check out each of these videos as they show up online and participating in our Missions Emphasis Day at Southeastern Seminary. Thanks so much for being with us, and pay attention throughout the day for other interviews with more students.